Basically, in software development, we really want to strive for something for to creating high-performing teams, high-performing product development teams, which can ship great products quickly and reliably. But let's be honest, along the way, we run into a lot of frustration. So if you just part of a software development organization or you lead them, and you know what I'm talking about, misunderstandings, inefficiencies, miscommunications, things getting stuck. There are so many obstacles every day that we could list it all day. And it's really easy to start blaming the people, the organization, the company, and so. But today, I wanted to offer you a different perspective, because I've seen a lot of practices working and even more not working regarding how we can work together. Hello, everyone. I'm András, Fincza, or how my friends call me, Draven. As Betty mentioned, I'm a tech lead at XUND. This is a health tech startup. We build medical device software that helps patients to find out their illnesses and their medical condition, and we suggest them treatments and direct them to the proper medical providers. But before XUND, I've worn many different hats. I was obviously software developer. I've been entrepreneur, CTO, and SVP, as an SVP engineering for a large company. I managed more than 150 developers. And for almost 20 years, I've been chasing the idea of high-performance development teams. Over time, I realized that usually not the tools and processes, org charts, or even individual talents that make the biggest difference. What really matters is really how all these roles work together, how we communicate, how we build trust, how we build culture, how we align on goals. It's less about processes, everything is about culture. And when team struggles, what we see are usually really just the symptoms: delays, bugs, people burn out, argumenting, a lot of debates. And underneath these symptoms, I usually find the same set of collaboration problems. But I like to think about these as a few recurring monsters I usually fight against. Today, I will introduce you 3 of them: delay, chaos, and overkill. Each villain show up in different ways, but they all slow down the development and also hurt production quality or development quality. And for each one of them, I will share a story or a few practices that help teams fighting against them. So let us start with the first one, the delay, the silent villain. And delay, also known as waiting, is really a tricky one, because we don't see that it as a work. Delay quietly kills productivity and destroys motivation. People feel blocked and powerless, even though they are technically busy. So to make it more tangible to you, let me show you it with an example from construction, so not from software development. Not long ago, I had the fortune or chance to watch an apartment block being built, a little bit more modern than that. Of course, there were plans, really detailed plans, so you cannot really build an apartment block without a lot of plans and a lot of regulations and complying with regulations and so on. But with all these things, it's not surprising that everything still slipped. Electricians waited for the updated plans from the interior designers. Tilers couldn't start before electricians finished. Painters waited on tilers, and nobody touched anything outside their own contract. Everyone tried to do their best, tried to do their part perfectly, but nobody looked at the whole system. Deadlines slipped, costs exploded, and experts had to come back again and again. I don't think that it's really far from you. I think it sounds familiar. To me, it really looked like a classical software project. And where is the delay in a classical software project? Delay shows up in a lot of places, like tickets or blocked Jira tickets on the backlogs on the board, developers waiting for designers, designers waiting for product decisions, pull requests waiting for review for days because everyone is just too busy, front-end teams who are waiting for the backend teams while the backend team is waiting for, again, a product decision. So these kind of things, really silent, slow things waiting. The dependencies are really overwhelming. So the question is how should we fight with the delay? I think that's a good to just come back to the analogy with the construction. So how do they solve in construction? Do you have an idea? In constructions, they came up with something called general contractor. So I don't say that that solved everything, but that solved at least a few things. So just having a lot of people with the same expertise together and one people who manages the whole construction, that really helped a lot. It made things simpler, and that really speeded up at least the management part of that, but also the construction itself. So in software development, we came up with something called cross-functional teams. This is really the same. A team that has the skills it needs to deliver an outcome, a delivery end-to-end. So what we are talking about is to put all the UX, data, product, QA, and of course the developers into the same team and consider them as a team with shared goal, with shared backlog, with shared responsibility for the result. And this does not magically remove all the waiting, but it really cuts a lot of unnecessary handovers throughout their work. People do not throw work over the organization, over the wall to other people. They can talk directly, they can work together directly. So that really helps a lot. In my last 10, 15 years, I've worked in I see a lot of different cross-functional teams, and I could really tell you that really helped a lot, that people just had this really strong connection between them, and they could just reach to each other anytime, basically. But just sitting together is usually not enough if everyone stays inside their narrow expert box. So cross-functional teams also introduced a few other villains. I will talk about them. But still, talking about delay and cross-functional team, there is one thing, is that there is really no ideal world, and that brings us to the next challenge. In most companies, it's not financially realistic that we have full-time UX designers, full-time data scientists for a team. These experts are shared across the organization, shared across several teams, and shared experts almost automatically create queues and bottlenecks. But that does not mean that you have to suffer from stopping and waiting for each other, because team can really do a lot of small decisions by themselves. Once I saw a team get stuck on a project, on a feature development, they couldn't really release it, and that project was about at least the UI part, where the problem was that there were two, input fields, 2 buttons, and that's all. And the problem was that they had a very huge window around that. It just covered the half of the screen. And I asked them, okay, but why are you waiting? And they said that we are waiting for the confirmation for the sizing from the UX designer. I was really furious. Come on, guys. In the application, there are thousands of examples how to size the window, how it should look like, and so on. We don't need a UX designer to come up with something, at least for the first time. If it's not okay, then we can just iterate on that. But that shouldn't block out development. So the real problem was not the dependency itself. The real problem was the mindset. They chose waiting over common sense and ownership. Expertise is everyone's business. Some expertise will always be shared, and that is fine. The goal is not always to eliminate sharing, but to reduce the dependency on that. So my suggestion for any companies and leaders is to just teach the people, to just level up the basic UX and data skills for the developers, for the product managers, for everyone in the team, because someone in the tech can really learn good enough in these areas, and that could mean that they can just do a lot of small decisions around their work, and that's a really great thing. Also, we can encourage people to use AI tools as well for that, and with that augmenting or filling their knowledge gaps, for example. Once I had, once I had my own startup, and obviously we didn't have enough money to have a lot of different expertise, so we had a few full stack developers and we did everything. So I was the data scientist. So if someone know me, they can tell that I'm really bad in maths and everything around data. But those small analytics things, which seems to be super high-tech compared to what I just did before, I could do it with using some ChatGPT magic, and that really helps. So it helped me to write some scripts, some queries, and so on, and we could find out what we needed. Yeah, besides that, internal talks, workshops, champions, and so on, these could really help the company to just share the knowledge, to level up people. And that will reduce waiting and also increase the product ownership across the organization and across the team. Do you know who they are? I help you with the first one. This is an ordinary developer. The second one. What? Overkill. Not the overkill. This is a T-shaped, open-minded full stack developer. So generalists or T-shaped people are really striving in such organizations. They are T-shaped because they know that good enough is a lot of times enough for certain areas in various subjects, instead of focusing one or two special areas and really being expert on that. They are really flexible, fast, curious people, and they unlock a lot of flow in cross-functional teams. And also removing the hard boundary between the front end and the back end side, that could also help a lot. So I also really advise to just train and or hire full stack developers as well, because that also really helps. Because that just having a few full stack developers in a team can really boost how you can make small decisions. And yeah. So it's not a silver bullet, but it changes the game for flow and autonomy. So that was the first villain. Now let's go to the second one. The second one is the chaos, the confusing villain. Chaos is what you get when everyone is very busy but not aligned. From the outside, you see a lot of activity, but the outcomes are really random. Chaos usually grows slowly from unclear goals and unclear roles. And first, I want to tell you a story. It was not long ago. We had a fully cross-functional team. I mean, that was the most cross-functional team I ever saw or I ever seen, because it not just had the product managers, developers, it had a UX designer, it had multiple data scientists, it had even domain experts in the team at the same room working together. Yet they struggled really badly. So this team was assembled to build a very important new product, and unfortunately, every planning meeting turned into a long argument about priorities and solutions. Nobody was sure who decided what, so decisions were constantly revisited. Each person pushed their own goals and objectives, and a lot of people felt that they are really tired and confused. Just give me a break, come on. Progress slowed, people burned out, some of them even left the company. On paper, it was really a cross-functional team, but it just didn't work by putting these people together. It was not a cross-functional team, it was a group of individuals, and as a team, they were dysfunctional. So expertise alone was not enough to fight the chaos, and also the decision to put them together. So what this team was missing was a clear leadership. And that's not trivial, because when you think of a development team, usually you think there is a leader, kind of leader of the developer team. But usually for a cross-functional team where you have multiple people from product, from UX, from design, and so on, from developers, usually there is no leader for that because too many expertise there. Well, who could make the decisions on that and so on? I don't know. Usually how I see there is no leader, but you need to have one. Someone has to say, here is our goal, here is the trade-off, this is good enough for now. And it doesn't matter who is that. It can be the product manager, it can be the tech lead, it can be anyone, just we need someone. The responsibilities must be clear, someone needs to have the ownership of that. We move into one direction and we can just somehow stop debating on unnecessary stuff. So once this, who is in lead, who can just coach or manage the team to go into one direction, and it's really said out loud very explicitly in the team, that could really make a useful change in the team and end these endless negotiations. And another aspect of this, one of the most underrated practice is simply sitting down and talking together. Talking about what do you expect from me, what I'm expecting from you, how we work together, how we make those decisions, what a good collaboration means to you. This is a really simple conversation, but still we just lack this conversation a lot of times. I once left a company which I loved because I had a lot of frustration with the product manager I have to work with. And we couldn't really just get over on these debates. And I think we just struggled for a half year or so and we almost killed each other when we just step back and say, okay, so come on, let's restart. And then now we need to align what you expect from me, what I expect from you. And we had a 1 hour long discussion on that. And from that point, he became one of the best friends of mine. So basically, everything just changed with this 1 hour. It's really just saved months of frustration in the future and really made us productive. And this is one thing which seems super trivial, but during coaching, during talking to people, when they have problems and I ask, okay, did you just sit together and talk about that and aligned on the responsibilities? They said, no, not yet. But that sounds good. Yeah, that's a great thing. Another thing, in healthy teams, accountability and psychological safety go together. Accountability means we care about the outcome, not just ticking off our own tasks. So when things go wrong, we look at the system and learn instead of hunting someone to blame. I suggest, and for that reason, I really suggest to you to have demos, regular sprint demos every 2 weeks, 1 week, every week maybe, but at least every few weeks, because that really creates a really healthy pressure on the team that, okay, now I need to just show our stuff, and that implies a few things, like I need to deliver something which I can show. So I cannot really just do some backend stuff. I need to show something which is really valuable, because then there is no value in the demo. So that is a really great pressure to be agile, to just split your things into small, deliverable product values. And I think that's really a fundamental way of doing agile development. But why I tell you that is that's also a very important part of how we work together, because that makes the team also accountable. Because now you are not accountable to your friends or to the product manager and so on, but you are accountable to the whole company who will see your demo. And by the way, a good demo is when you demo it for the whole company, or at least a lot of stakeholders, not just to your friends, because then that doesn't add too much value. So this moment in the demo forces honest discussion about what really matters and whether we are on track or not. So that was the second lane, the chaos, and now we reached the last one, the third one. This is the overkill. So overkill is born from good intentions and fear. We want to be ready for every edge case, every future scenario, every possible client. So we build just-in-case features, just-in-case abstractions, just-in-case architecture, because we may need it. The result usually is that we build really powerful systems, but people won't use it, or at least the full potential. Sometimes it's unusable, most of the times, or I mean, almost all the times it's unmaintainable, because it's just too complex, or at least it added a lot of complexity to the whole product. In one company I worked for, I saw the most complicated, most complex permission system I've ever seen. So it had, in the database, it had 10 plus tables and so on, a lot of connections. I worked for SAP before, so I know what is complex, and that was SAP grade complexity. For a glorified form, basically, so that the product itself was, I couldn't imagine why we need that complex thing. And every time I was thinking on that, I just imagined the guy or girl or anyone who just came up with the idea that with the very best intention, they just browse the internet and try to find the best possible permission system ever, and they just build it. But for what? See, it wasn't worth. No one used its potential. See, how we use this is that we created the most simple kind of permissions and roles because no one dared to touch the whole system. When I joined the company, there were no people who fully understood that, and no one really dared to touch the system. So this is what I'm talking about, and you might ask, how does, or what does this have to do with how team works together? Actually, a lot. To avoid that kind of overcomplication, you need the whole product team involved in the product planning and discovery, and also in the decisions regarding the product or the project. And that starts with the discovery itself, and it continues with how we scope things. So, I tell you that product discovery should never be a solo act. Real insight comes from a mix of perspectives: product, engineering, UX, QA, data. Technical constraints, customer behavior, usability will all shape the final product, and will all shape the right solution. When only one role does the discovery, like the product manager, important aspects are often missed. So let me show you it with a concrete example. I once worked on an HTML email editor, similar to what you can see if you register to MailChimp or this kind of stuff. So the product manager and the UX came up with the idea with this fancy editor, and they said that, okay, yeah, that should be super fancy, meaning that we need to have a grid here and blocks here, and you can just put any blocks from here to the grid here, and you can just make any permutations of the blocks here and there, and so on. And we developers, we were furious how to do that, because if you ever created an HTML email, you know what I'm talking about. This is the hardest thing ever in software development. I think it's a larger problem than general artificial intelligence to have a really great HTML email editor. So we thought that won't fit. So we talked about a half-year project or something like that, but we thought, okay, to have that without bugs, we will need at least 1 year and a few people to replace, because people will just leave the company. But anyway, we couldn't really argue on that, but what I could, I was the team lead of that project, the tech lead of the project, leading the developers. What I could just do is to get a week for the team to come up with something. And what I just did is that I just put all the developers in the team and to find solutions. So in the world, how people do HTML email editors. And obviously there were some discovery before from the product management on that, but they just saw the product perspectives on that, not the technical ones. So I really wanted to see, okay, I know this is a super complex domain, but how people do that. And we just split the findings, and every developers just try to check a few of these solutions. And after a few days, we found a very small editor company kind of a thing where they had a brilliant idea. They said, okay, yeah, there were some products which had the grid, but they were really buggy. So we didn't see any which just worked flawlessly, but we saw one which worked with rows. So you cannot put anything here and there. You have rows, and you can put rows in the email above each other, on top of them, and so on. That's it. And that's super trivial, and that is, I don't know, 100 times less complex thing. So we told the product manager that I think we've been inspired. So we have this idea to use rows. And they just had a product discovery on that. They just made some user research, and the UX just approved that, hey, these things can work, and also the users are like it. They just like it more than the grid one. So that was really a success. We could deliver the whole project in time, and yeah. The moral of the story was that without the involving the developers into that, without involving the technical perspectives to the product management, then that project would have been haunted. But not just the discovery where we need to share the effort. So scoping is also a team effort, and what I'm talking about. So you may know something called the project management triangle. This is a very classic thing. We have the cost, we have the quality, and we have the time. And it's, you can see this is not yet a triangle. We will reach that in a sec. So what does it mean? For every project, you have these levers. So you can just give more time to the project. Usually this is really fixed. So we have deadlines, so we cannot really add more time. We have the quality, so we can reduce the quality of the product. We can just create a lot of technical debt. So this is also something which we don't want to use, this lever. We want to develop in quality. And the last one is the cost is, for example, how many people are working on the project. Usually people are the most costly things in software development. But this is something, again, you couldn't really work with this lever, because if you add more developers, in short term, that won't help the project itself, maybe in mid-term, but usually for some time it just slows things down. So these are usually fixed. But there is one thing which we can use the most, and that's called the scope. The scope is the actual thing what we will deliver, the actual solution, the actual little problems what we solve. And this is the part where all the other people who are not the product managers, so UX, developers, data, and so on, they can really add their value for these conversations, and come up with the best solution, the right scope of the project, which will solve the product problem. For this reason, project managers should think not in solutions and features, but they should think of problems. These are the problems we want to solve. These are the metrics we want to change or reach. These are the KPIs and so on. Finding the right solutions with the given constraints, cost, time, and quality. With the whole team, we can find a good enough scope which we can deliver in time. So we should do it together. But there is one important thing I want to mention here, is that be careful with the developers, because they will lie, though they don't know about that. So developers really like to over-engineer things. Maybe that's true for data scientists and UX designers, but I don't know them that much. But developers, yeah, super over-engineers usually. So everyone, especially the product manager, should be really solid on to make the team accountable on the technical decisions, and to challenge any technical decisions if that seems to be a very long, to have very long consequences. So that is a really important thing, and this is the only way to avoid building a very huge complex permission system ever. Because I also checked out how it could happen that we had this project and this complex permission system, and it turned out that basically there was a product requirement for that, and there was really not a lot of conversation of the technical details, so you just somehow things just, so we end up with that complex things. Yeah, so give the team space to think of the scope and push them to come up with simplification ideas. And the last story for today is that we had a project to rebuild an analytics dashboard in my current company, this dashboard became very slow because some decisions happened before that for optimization, they load all the data into the memory and do all the aggregations in the memory. And you can imagine with a lot of data, it didn't scale. It meant that for some customers, they could only see 3 months of data. So from product perspective, that was pretty straightforward, make it work. So have the feature parity of that, but now it should work, it should be usable. Yeah, but when I wrote the backlog for that, I realized that there is one widget, it's not in the image unfortunately, there is one widget which we had, and it really caused a massive pains to the developers. We also had operational problems with just loading all the data to that. And when I asked the team, why did you develop that back then? They said, oh, that was a super important thing in a few years ago, because we thought that with this data on that widget, we will change the full packaging and pricing model of the company to use this data, but it didn't happen. But the widget remained, and we had a lot of problems with that. So no one ever dared to ask whether we still need that. So everyone just suffered because of that operationally and so on. And when I asked the product manager about that, he had no clue what is the problem with it. So he thought that, okay, we will bring all the data the same as we bring all the other data with that. He didn't know that that widget worked a little bit differently, and we had that many problems with that. So again, that conversation the team just missed with the product manager. And when I asked, okay, come on, we are not really using this. Can we just omit this widget in the recreated dashboard? He said, yeah, of course, we are not needing that. And that one thing just saved 2 weeks of development for us in this project. So the point is, even with the best communication flow, sometimes it's really hard to see the hidden technical obstacles, and the scope and complexity must always be questioned from both sides. You have to foster debates over them. In this example, it came from the technical side, from me, but it could have happened from the other side, from the product manager as well. How to make this project faster? What should we just omit from the new dashboard? With that, we arrive to the end. So a few takeaways. We met 3 villains tonight: delay, chaos, and overkill. Delay is all the invisible waiting in our system, and we reduce it by working in real cross-functional teams and growing overlapping skills. Chaos appears when everyone is busy, but nobody is truly aligned. So we make leadership and decision ownership very explicit, and we build a culture where people can speak up safely. The last one, overkill, is what happens when we design and build just in case. So we pull engineers, product and UX together into the discovery and to the scoping, and keep asking for the smallest valuable slice. It feels like a lot, so do not try to fix everything at the same time. Pick one villain you want to fight with, what you recognize in your team, and choose one practice from tonight, and you can try it in the next weeks. The last thing is, remember, product development is a social exercise, not a solo sport, and when people really work together, the results will follow. That was me. Thank you. I'm really happy to hear your stories and questions.